So you might have realised by now that I am not good at the F1 game. I mean, it literally took me 500 laps to get into the top 20% in the world around Monaco. However, I'm not going to let this stop me, and I'm about to spend the next week of my life breaking the most random F1 game world records. All the way from the slowest lap ever set on the F1 game to the fastest with a maxed out My Team car. So the first world record that I wanted to set was a no rules world record, something that you might have seen on this channel before, but I've got a lot better at F1 23 since then, so to be honest, it doesn't really require its own video anymore. However, you best believe I will be rinsing the idea the second F1 24 comes out. Anyway, I'm going to be doing this challenge around Miami because I didn't think there'd be much competition, but I was so wrong. So for my first lap, as you can imagine, it was pretty rubbish, so we'll go through it quickly. All I was trying to do was learn the racing lines because for some of the corners there was a lot of runoff space and I could utilise it for a really good exit. Moving on, we are now slowly coming up to the end of the lap, and I was hoping to be within 3 seconds of the world record, but to be honest, I was not sure of what to expect at all. So next up was the final corner, and predictably I had a shocking run through it. Anyways, I was now coming up to the line and I had just set a lap time under 2 seconds away from the record, and I won't lie to you lot, I was absolutely buzzing. And then a few laps later I made another very small improvement. Okay, so we're now on to the big improvements. By the way, as you can see, I've turned on Rival Ghost to try and follow the world record holder, and this worked out so well for me. So I was following his racing line through every corner, and coming onto the second DRS straight of the track I was now 7/10ths up. So now we're on to the hard part of the track. I actually cut turn 11 really well, which gained me a lot of time, and going through turn 12 I maintained this. However, I had an absolute masterclass from turn 13 to the exit of turn 16. I was just super committed, and this brought me to 1.2 seconds up on the delta on the exit of the corner, and I thought I was about to break the world record already. Next up was the final corner, and sadly I didn't have that good of a run through it, or to be honest a good exit, which meant that by the end of the lap I finished only 1/10 behind the world record. However, I knew that I could find this 10th if I set a slightly better first sector. And on the very next lap I was on it. Coming up to the first corner I decided to brake a little bit earlier so I would get a better exit, and this worked out perfectly. And after the first 3 turns I was already half a second up, and this was more than enough to break the world record. So coming up to turn 4 I kept gaining time all the way up to 8/10ths up, which was huge. I'm not sure what to name these corners as I cut most of the track off, but coming into turn 8 I took a much wider line so I could set myself up for a good exit. Well, this ended up working out horrifically because on the exit I hit the wall and I dropped about half the time I had gained straight away. And it only got worse to the next proper corner where I was only just 3/10ths up and the pressure was definitely on. Going through turn 12 I gained just over a 10th, but going through turn 13 I had an absolute howler and lost almost 3/10ths. However, I then made up for it through turn 14, 15 and the exit of 16. So I took these 3 corners so well, and I was now leaving turn 16 after taking a better line 4/10ths up and gaining. Now it's time for the final proper corner of the lap, and my braking point was perfect. So to be honest, I probably could have had a slightly better run through the final corner, but it will do, and I had just successfully completed my first world record attempt in only 7 laps, and I was so happy. So the next world record I wanted to set was a little bit of a different one. I was going to try and set the slowest lap on the entirety of the F1 game. So to do this I'd have to use the slowest supercar, which is the Aston Martin DB11 V12. Okay, so at first I genuinely thought this was going to be so easy. I would just set a 5-minute lap time and then move on to the next challenge. Well, as you can see here, I thought I'd completed the challenge, but then I realised that my lap time hadn't even registered. This is where I realised that I had to set a lap time slightly slower than the default Ghost while being slower than literally everyone else who had ever set a lap time on this track. So my first lap attempting this I thought went pretty well. I was about 6/10ths up on the default Ghost, which I thought was nothing, until I looked at the leaderboard and I realised that I actually had competition. Yeah, this wasn't ideal. However, it didn't really matter in the end because a few attempts later I set a lap time half a tenth faster than the default Ghost, and that was another world record ticked off. So I think it would only be right now that we've set the slowest lap with a supercar to set a world record with one. I'm once again using the Aston, and I'm up against Tomiland26, who set a lap time of a 2 minute 30.809. And knowing this car, this won't be easy to beat. So for my first lap, as you can imagine, it was a bit of a disaster. This was my first time properly driving a supercar in over 2 months, and it definitely shows, so we're going to go through this lap quickly. So we're coming into turn 7 here, and I broke at the right point, but I ended up turning in a little bit too late and then smashing into the barrier after getting the power down just a little bit early. This wasn't the best start, but it is what it is, and at least I knew that I could find so much time here. Anyway, we'll go to the end of the lap now, and I was aiming to beat a time of a 2 minute 30.540, but I knew that I'd be lucky to be within 10 seconds of this time. Right, so I clearly just sacked off turn 16, but looking back I think I was trying to set myself up for a better exit on the next lap. Anyway, we're coming up to the line, and in the end I set a lap time that was actually under 10 seconds away from the world record, and this was amazing because I knew that I could find so much time very quickly. And that's exactly what I did on the very next lap. I was already 2 seconds up coming into turn 7, and I had a normal run through it this time with no crashing. And I went from 2 seconds up to 6.5 seconds up, which was huge. In the end, I gained another second on this lap, and I reduced the gap to the world record in only 2 laps from 9 seconds away to 1.5 seconds away. However, I did need to set a valid lap soon, and that is what I did on the next lap. I also made a 3/10 improvement, and I was slowly edging closer to the world record. And then on the next day, on literally the first lap, I was improving again. Coming into turn 16, I was 2.7 tenths up, but I broke a little too late, which wasn't ideal. However, this did set me up for a very good exit, and I also took the final 2 corners extremely well, and I gained time the whole way along the main straight. In the end, I actually managed to gain just over 9 tenths, and now I was just under 3 tenths away from the world record, which I knew that I could beat if I had a slightly better middle sector. So after a few restarted failed attempts, we're coming into turn 1 here, and I've just nailed my braking point. However, on the exit, I just turned in way too early, and I actually hit the wall, so now I was 2 tenths down and losing time coming into the second corner. By the way, I've got no idea how I didn't invalidate there. Anyway, turn 2 is of course up next, but this time I turned in way too late, and I once again touched the wall, which gave me an equally bad exit. And this had not been a good start to the lap. Right, so we'll quickly go through the end of the first sector and the start of the middle sector, as I just seem to be losing time everywhere until the 2 corners before the castle section. Coming through turn 6, I gained about 4 tenths back, and then through turn 7, I brought my delta to only a tenth down. Okay, so now we're going through the part of the middle sector where I knew that I could gain time, and I absolutely nailed this section. I had such a good exit leaving turn 12, and I was already 4 tenths up, which was more than enough to break the world record. Next up was turn 13, and this was genuinely one of the hardest corners on the track, because unlike an F1 car, you can definitely not take this corner flat. And as you can see, I was just way too committed coming into the corner, which cost me a tenth, but to be honest, I was quite lucky not to get an invalidation from this. Now it's time for turn 15, and I took this corner perfectly. My entry to 15 was pretty much bang on, and then I managed to have a solid exit, which brought me back to over 4 tenths up coming into the final sector. Next up was turn 16, and I knew that there was so much time to find on the entry to the corner. To be honest, my entry wasn't exactly perfect, however it was better than my previous personal best, and I gained 2 tenths. Now for some reason, going through turn 17, which should be an easy flat right-hander, I practically drifted through it, which cost me well over a tenth and a half. 18 and 19 were up next, and I actually managed to hold my nerve this time, and I gained just a little bit of time. This is why I knew that I had definitely beaten the world record. So that was another world record ticked off, and so far this video was going very well. I had 1 world record to go, and I was feeling so confident that I could beat whatever was in front of me. Well, this would turn out to be not quite as easy as I thought that it was going to be. So the third world record that I wanted to set was once again a no rules world record, however this time with an F2 car. I was certain that there wouldn't be any competition for this, but once again for some reason there actually was. Anyway, we'll skip over my first lap as it wasn't actually that bad, so there's nothing to show you. My run through the final corner wasn't too bad either. We're now coming up to the line, and this gave me a time that was just under 5 seconds away from the world record, and I knew that I could complete this very soon if I just kept practicing. I made so many improvements over the next few laps, and by the 6th lap I was already within 4 tenths of the record. However, I knew that this lap would have to be pretty mega to complete the challenge, and then a few restarts later I was once again on a banging lap. Coming into turn 1, I broke a little bit later than my previous personal best, and I also got close to the apex, which gained me a load of time. And then going through turn 2, 3 and 4, I managed to keep my delta in the green, which was ideal. Leaving this section of corners, I was already at a quarter of the improvement that I would need to complete this challenge. Now we're coming out to whatever turns these are. I can't lie, I don't think we can count these as actual corners. Anyway, I was way too under the limit going into them, and this definitely cost me loads of time, so I decided to take a wider line onto the DRS straight. This worked out perfectly, and I got such a good exit, and I made up for so much of the time that I'd already lost. This gain eventually made me be actually over the amount that I needed, and now I knew that I could definitely break the record on this lap. However, after this, I didn't cut turn 11 well, which cost me about 3 tenths, and the pressure was definitely on. And then going through turn 12, I maintained this, but I cut turn 13, 14 and 15 really well, and then I bounced off the wall on the exit of 16, which somehow set me up for a good exit. And then coming down the third DRS straight, I was just under 3 tenths down with time to find specifically on the exit of the final corner. Coming into the final corner, I knew that I could be late on the brakes, and that's exactly what I did. I managed to somehow gain under a tenth actually coming into the corner, and I had such good rotation, which helped me get the exit that I needed. But then I had a huge wobble that I just about saved. Not gonna lie, I thought I completely bottled it for a moment, and coming up to the line I wasn't sure if I had done enough. However, in the end I managed to successfully complete the challenge, and that was 1 more world record ticked off. And the final world record that I wanted to set was once again one that I've already done on this channel. By the way, can you tell that I'm running out of ideas? Anyway, this was trying to beat a time trial world record, but with a maxed out My Team car, because obviously I'm not that good at the F1 game to do it normally. So my first lap was an absolute disaster, as I had to overtake about 3 cars, and I ran out of VRS with about 10% of the lap left. So after a shocking exit out of the final corner, I set a lap time of a 104.999, which was only 2.2 seconds away from the world record. And at this point I knew that the record was definitely possible. And then a couple laps later I was once again improving. Coming into turn 6 I was 2/100ths up, but I had a much better run through the corner which gained me 2/10. However, I had a massive wobble on the curb on the exit which definitely cost me loads of time. Turn 7 was up next and pretty much the same thing happened because I had a wobble on the exit but I gained so much time, and coming into turn 9 I was 8/10ths up. Through turn 9 I had a slightly better run and I gained about half a tenth. Now it was time for the final corner, and it wasn't a great run through it at all, but I still made an improvement which was eventually over a second. This put me within 1.2 seconds of the world record, but I was still on medium tyres. Now it's time for my first lap on soft tyres. By the way, this was in another practice session and that's why the difference to the world record has changed. Coming into the final 2 corners I was 1.2 seconds up with 2.5 required. Turn 9 was very solid and I thought that I was on for the world record, and then through the final corner I was slightly away from the apex and I couldn't quite find the 3 extra tenths that I needed. However, this was my first lap under a second away from the world record, but I knew that I needed a pretty special lap to complete the challenge. And then a few failed practice sessions later, I was on a flyer. Coming into turn 1, I broke earlier than I had on the previous lap, and I got such a good exit because this time I actually ran over the curb, which was ideal. So I didn't have delta from a previous lap at this point, so I was just working with sector times. Coming up to turn 3, I knew that I was around a 10th up, which was proved, which wasn't enough, so I knew that I had to push on. Run through turn 3 was absolutely perfect, and I got such good traction, and I knew that this was a huge opportunity to complete the challenge. Now it was time for turn 4, and this was pretty much perfect. I had such a good entry, and I ran over the curb really well, and then on the exit of the corner, I once again had such good traction. Turn 5 is flat and turn 6 was where I knew that I could find time. Honestly, the entries of the corner wasn't that good, but I didn't have a massive wobble on the exit and I knew this gained me time. As you can see, this was the case. I now knew that I was about half a second up, but I wasn't actually sure, so I had to keep pushing flat out. It was time for the final 2 corners and I knew that it was now or never. First up was turn 9, and I'm not going to lie, I definitely could have taken this corner better, and I knew that I now had to take the final corner fully committed. And that's exactly what I did, because I don't think I could have cut that corner anymore. In the end, I managed to beat the world record by just under 2/10ths of a second, and I had now completed this entire challenge. Thank you all for watching this video, and please recommend another world record that you'd like me to attempt in the future. Subscribe.